And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. I'm your host, Wes Tankersley. Excuse me if I cough. I still got this stupid cough that I've been talking about for months now. But today we have an awesome episode for you. It is Jay Gafford, aka Architect the Dreamer. If you know him, he's on TikTok, and that's where I found him. He raps about a lot of cool stuff. He also is a big advocate for men's health, and I just thought it would be a great story to tell and kind of help you guys if you're looking to get in a music career, into podcasting, anything like that. He is a great resource. So here we go. Jay, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
It's been good watching you over, like I said, I kind of took a little break from TikTok. So I think I've probably been following you since the beginning that I was on there for about 2 years. And then I took like 3 months off, and then I keep coming back, and you always are in my FYP. So,
well, that's where I want to be.
Exactly. That's where everyone wants to be, right? Yeah, it's tough though. This stupid algorithm is kind of being ridiculous right now. It's,
nobody knows what it's doing.
No, I don't even think it knows what it's doing.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. So the first thing that I ever saw you do was kind of like it was a rap. It was like I saw you do a duet side by side with a guy. He sang one part, you sang the other. And I was like, man, this is freaking hits hard. This is awesome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of who you are, where you grew up, things like that, so they can kind of get an idea of where, you started.
Yeah. So my dad was in the music industry. He started out as a radio DJ and then just kind of moved his way up with that into like director positions and stuff like that. So through the age of 10, we moved a ton because I don't know how much you've listened to the radio, but radio DJs tend to come and go fairly frequently, right. Especially if they're moving on to something bigger or better. So I was born in Indiana, but throughout my young childhood, lived in several places there, lived in Alabama for a while, and then Minnesota. And when we were in Minnesota, my dad decided to start his own business doing radio promotions. And so at the time we had family in Michigan. And so we decided to move to Michigan. And then some of that family moved after we moved. And so that was kind of where I grew up, was in Michigan, starting around the age 10, and was always around music. My dad was, he was very heavily involved in a lot of aspects of music, and primarily like Christian inspirational music, which is not my cup of tea, but and it's a genre that's all but died at this point, but back in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was still kind of thriving. And I started singing when I was 5. The first video that I have of me was singing This Little Light of Mine at a church in Alabama. And I just always loved music. It was something.
Did you post that on TikTok? I feel like I saw that. You just recently did that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of a then and now video.
Right.
So I've always loved music. It's always been a way for me to either just kind of let my mind be at peace. It's been a form of therapy when I just needed to kind of block out the world. Growing up in school, I was always kind of an outcast and a nerd, and got bullied a ton, and was just kind of didn't have a ton of friends. And I mean, up until age 10, I really had no friends because we moved so much that I didn't really have the opportunity to have any. Right. And then when we got to Michigan, it was an interesting experience. The first school that I went to when I was in 4th grade was basically an all-black school. I was the only white kid in it. And so I was very much the outsider there. But one of the positive things that came from that is that I got kind of thrust into hip hop and hip hop culture at a really young age. And I think 9 years old, my first hip hop album was Illmatic by Nas. And then I think Year of the Dog by DMX was my second album. And so I just I fell in love with the music, like the beat and just the instrumentation. And then I also just fell in love with this idea that you can, I think, a lot of times in hip hop, you can say, you can, because you're saying more words, you can say more than in like a pop song,
Right.
because you are rapping, you're able to kind of get that out, and it really is like poetry to an extent. And so I started writing when I was probably 10 years old, and all of it was horrible, but it was something that just kind of gripped me. And then I got older and got to high school, and fell in love with punk and pop punk and metal and stuff like that. And so I just kind of started expanding my horizons as far as what I was listening to, what was inspiring me, what was influencing me. And in my late teens and early 20s, I started playing in punk metal bands, did a little bit of touring, and was just a fun time, but ended up kind of getting real heavy into the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing. And became a heavy alcoholic and drug user, and my life just kind of started spiraling. And so I ended up attempting suicide in 2013, and somehow survived that. I downed a fifth of whiskey and about a dozen oxycodone, and enough to knock a horse out, let alone a human, and somehow survived through that and ended up going to rehab and getting clean. And this last June was 9 years completely sober. So that was kind of a turning point as far as that's concerned. But when I got out of rehab, I was like, I can't go back to what I was doing. And me going to rehab kind of broke up the band that I was in at the time, because I was the
Yeah.
lead singer. And it's like, well, you don't really have a band without your lead singer. And if your lead singer is an addict, it's not really it's not how you shape success.
Right.
So so I actually walked away from music for about 5 years. From 2013 to 2018, I released one random single in 2016 under my name. It wasn't an artist name or anything,
Yeah.
but that was about it. And then in 2018, 2019, I don't know if you remember the MGK Eminem beef that was happening, and
Right.
the diss tracks that came out. And during that time was kind of like SoundCloud rappers were kind of on the rise, and a lot of them were releasing really horrible tracks that were basically talking about how, like, it was one side or the other. It was like, oh, if I would have gone up against M, I would have taken him down. Or it was like, MGK is trash, I'm gonna one up him or whatever. And so as a joke, like I've written rap and hip hop for basically my whole life, but I didn't really do a whole lot with it. And
Right.
so as a joke, I wrote this joke rap and I threw it up on SoundCloud, and I had a bunch of people that were like, I know you said this is a joke, but this is actually really good.
Right.
And looking back on it, it's trash. But I think being that it was kind of something that came out of nowhere from me, a lot of people were like, you should do more of this. And so I was like, all right, I'll keep doing this. So that was kind of 2018, 2019 is really when I kind of started getting real heavy back into music. And through 2019, I kind of hit a brick wall as far as what I was able to do, because I couldn't really afford a studio. I couldn't really afford going to a studio or having somebody else record me and mix me and stuff. And I was just doing a really terrible job mixing things through like Audacity, and my quality of recordings were not keeping up with my growth as an artist and my actual like skill and ability. And it was showing. And so I would like write these really great songs, and I could perform them live and they'd be great, but the actual recordings just sounded like I was recording in a bathtub. And so it just wasn't good. So one of my buddies at the time, who was a bit more of an established artist, he goes by Edify, kind of took me under his wing a little bit and started kind of teaching me how to mix and master and stuff. And so that was probably early 2020, is when I kind of started that. And then I kind of went on this journey of like, all right, I don't have the money to go pay somebody else to do all these things. I don't have the
Right.
money to pay for mixing, recording, mastering, for artwork, for any distribution, for any of these things. So I'm just going to do it myself. And I mean, went to YouTube University and just kind of started
Right.
teaching myself, and yeah, so that's kind of been the last 2 to 3 years, and just kind of continued growing in those areas. I do everything for myself. So I mean, all my stuff I write myself. I don't have anybody else co-writing or anything with me. I record everything. I mix and master everything. I do all the artwork. I do all of my own distribution. I do all of my own promotion and marketing. I do everything. And it started out as like a necessity, and now it's like I don't want to do it any other way,
Right.
because it gives me so much control over when I want to do stuff and when I want to release things, and just the whole process. I mean, if I'm in a rut and I'm just not really feeling it, I don't have to worry about, well, you're in a contract, you have to release a song every
Right.
6 months, or you have to, or anything like that. And really the only thing that comes out of pocket for me now, because I am several years into this, is if I also like produce, so I produce a lot of instrumentals and beats and stuff like that, and I've started using a lot of those in my own music now, which I didn't at first, but as I've kind of gotten better, I'm like, you know what, my beats are fire, like I'm gonna
Right.
use my own stuff. But the only thing I really spend money on is if I want to work with another producer, which I have about 3 or 4 that I've become friends with over the years, and I want to support them, and they also have different vision than I do. So the kind of beats that I make are not the same as the kind of beats that they make. And if there's a certain sound that I don't really feel like I can reproduce, then I'll go to them and I'll be like, hey, this is kind of what I'm wanting to do. This is the sound. Okay, I want a beat that's going to sound like DaBaby, or I want a beat that's
Right.
going to sound like Kanye, or I want a beat that's going to whatever. And I can work with them, because people have asked like who my inspirations are as a producer, and I have a ton of them, but my beats don't really sound like any of their beats.
Right.
And I have a hard time kind of placing like what my beats sound like. Like as an artist, I get compared to a lot of other artists, and some of them I can see, some of them I can't. But as a producer, like, I mean, some of my favorites are like Mike Shinoda and Switz Beats and Pharrell and Tommy Prophet, who does most of NF's stuff. And a lot of my beats just don't sound like that. I want to say that I have like my own sound, and so that's cool, but it also can be a little bit limiting at times if I'm feeling creative in a different vein outside of
Right.
what I can produce myself. So yeah, that's kind of been like my life as far as music is concerned. I started TikTok in 2019, and uh, did it kind of off and on with that early stuff that I had, and was gaining no traction. I mean, I did it for maybe 6 months and was getting like at most 100 views on a video. I had maybe
Right.
a couple followers, and I was like, this is dumb. I'm not doing this. And so I quit TikTok. And then early 2020, kind of as the pandemic hit, I was like, all right, I'm going to give this another try. And for the first probably 6 months, again, didn't really have much success. I think I maybe had a couple videos that got into the 300 to 400 view range, and nothing was really working. And then in August of 2020, so about 2 years ago to the date right now, there's a producer on TikTok who went by Ricky Desktop, and he put out this banjo beat that like blew up, and it just went super viral. And I did a little 15-second duet of it, and that video ended up getting like 80,000 views.
I'm pretty
And so
sure that's the one that I saw. I mean, that was like
that might
the
have
big
been,
one, because he was
yeah.
like, they like created the beat or something, and you wrote rap to it, and it just
Mm-hmm.
was like, and that's what I usually, when I see you, that's kind of what I see, and it just like, holy shit, this guy is talented. This is, it's like there's a process that you have, right? And it's weird because I'm always into, it doesn't matter what genre, because I listen to them all. You know, rap's that way, rock's that way, country's that way. They all have that's the people who write their own music and are telling their own story is just amazing. I interviewed Jake Rose from New Medicine, and he's got his own country stuff, and it's just like every song that he writes is about what his life is about. And like you're talking about, you know, you rap about a lot of life experiences, and the independent part of that is like super cool because you can do whatever the hell you want. And I think that's what broke New Medicine up in the beginning, was the fact that they were trying to get a record deal. They got one. They realized what it wasn't that it wasn't what they wanted. The record company was telling them, hey, this is too rock, this is too rap, this is not what we want, this is what you need to do. And they were like, he wrote a song called Fuck It, because it was about screw them. I'm going to do what I want, and I'm going to be successful in my own way. And that's what I see you kind of doing.
Yeah. And it was crazy because that one video took me from, I want to say, about 250 followers to about 5,000 in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And from then on, it's just kind of been, I have about 52, almost 53,000 followers on TikTok right now. And it's not really been a lump sum thing for me.
Right.
I've only had maybe 3 or 4 videos go semi-viral. And even those, I think the most I've ever gotten is around 200,000 views on a video. And that's on TikTok. And I've gone through major slumps where I'm like, why am I even doing this? Like, and right now is actually one of those. Like, I've kind of hit this wall on TikTok for whatever reason, where doesn't really matter what I'm doing, whether it's duets, whether it's clips of my own stuff, whether it just doesn't matter. They're not doing great right now. And it's super frustrating and discouraging at times, because as an artist, you feel like you're putting out really quality music that you want people to hear. Like,
right.
you brought it up briefly, but like, my music is a diary of my life in a lot of ways. And it's therapy for me. It's a way that I can get my feelings out in a somewhat productive way. And so there's a lot of me in that music. And I also know that there's a lot of people like me. And so for me, it's not about fame. It's not about money. I want my music to help people, and I want to be able to support my family with my passion. I mean, that's my ultimate goal. I don't need to be rolling in Bentleys and iced out and all that stuff. Like, if I can live comfortably and I can provide my family the life that I didn't really have growing up, then that is success for me. It's not about all that extra stuff. I want to live a comfortable life, right? I want to not have to worry about bills. I want to make sure that we've got working vehicles. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to do all of those things, but I don't need to do them extravagantly. Yeah, sometimes I like some nice things, but that's just kind of like a bonus. That's not like what is driving me or pushing me to do what I'm doing. What's really pushing me is this is not a hobby. This is like who I am. This is a part of me. I've tried to take breaks from music before. Even in the last 3 years, I've taken time off and been like, man, I don't know if I want to keep pushing. I've been at this for 15 years,
right.
and it feels like I'm not making the progress that I want to make. And I always get to a point, a month, 2 months, 3 months in, where I'm like, I can't not make music.
Yeah,
it's second nature for me. Like, I'll watch a video on TikTok, or I'll hear a beat for a song that comes out, and I'm like, that beat is fire. I know I could tear that up. Or I'll come up with a melody in my head, and I'm like, this melody is killer. Like, I need to do something with this. And it's not just hip hop either. I mean, over the last year and a half, I've put out a pop punk metal album that was just me. My next single, which I haven't announced the release date on it yet, but it's later this year, is a straight up like pop punk pop banger. And I've got some other things that are just kind of all over the place. And I really I have so many influences, and I do enjoy music as a whole, because I think every genre has, oops, my headphone just fell out.
Oh, you're good.
Every genre has something to offer, and I think even if you're not making music within that genre, you can learn things about songwriting. You can learn things about writing melodies. You can learn things about song structure. Like, oh man, I never would have thought normally it's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, but they did it this way, and that's
Right.
kind of cool. Or they don't even have a chorus; it's just one continuous song all the way through, and which that's more prevalent in hip hop. You'll get a lot of like cypher style songs from artists where it's like maybe 2 or 3 artists on a track. There's no real hook. It's just everybody raps for 45 seconds to a minute, and it's just bars on bars on bars. And because that's something that like you're not going to see that necessarily in like a radio pop song. In a radio pop song, you got to kind of do that verse chorus. You got to have a big like dramatic bridge and then go into like a really like powerful ending chorus. And you see that consistently with everybody who's at the top of the pop charts, whether that's Beyonce or Katy Perry back in the day, or
well, it's it's that big record label driving that though, right? Because they need to make the money. In order to make the money, they got to have something that's catchy and hooky, like freaking Justin Bieber and all those things. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. It's a formula, and it's a formula that like admittedly sells. But the problem is a lot of those artists are then kind of left with nothing. So let me kind of give you, I don't know, how much do you know about like how record labels work and how their deals work with artists? Do you know a lot about that?
A little bit, but you can go ahead and, I know a little bit about it, but go ahead and explain the audience so they kind of have an idea.
So here's some tea for anybody who's listening that may be an independent artist and has this dream of ending up on a record label. And don't get me wrong, record labels have advantages. They absolutely do. And if you can get yourself in a artist friendly deal, then absolutely go for it. But generally the way that this works is record labels are primarily promotion and marketing. That's what they can offer, because everything else you can do yourself. Everything else you can record yourself. You can get things mixed and mastered. You can distribute through CD Baby, or I use a company called Amuse or DistroKid or whatever, and you can do it fairly cheap. What a record label has to offer is their connections and their budget. Their money is really what they have. So what they'll do is they'll come to an artist and say, hey, we really like this song. We want to sign you to release this song. We're going to give you X amount of money, and you're going to use that for basically getting everything done. So let's say you've got a demo and they love that demo, and they're like, all right, you're going to use this money to find a studio, find a producer, find an engineer, do all these things. But this money is a loan. So let's say they're like, okay, here's $2 million. Make the best record you can possibly make with that 2 million. And then use that, and we'll use our connections to help market it and promote it and things like that. And then you have to pay that 2 million back before you make a penny off of anything. So record sales, merchandise, ticket sales, if you're going on tour, all of that stuff is generally wrapped in those contracts, to the point where until you pay that $2 million back, you don't have anything. So what gets a lot of young artists is they only see, oh shoot, I'm about to make $2 million. Like, I can do all these things. And what screws a lot of artists, and why a lot of artists don't really go anywhere, is because they get that 2 million, and then they go out and they buy a house, or they buy a car, or they buy all these other things, and they don't put it back into their music the way that they should. They may spend money on a producer and an engineer and stuff, but instead of going to producer A plus over here, they're going to producer C, because they already spent their money on all this other stuff. And then you get to a point where you have an artist who is upside down in a deal, and they either are bought out, and basically they don't own any part of that song anymore. The record label owns that and can do whatever they want with it, even if you're not signed with them anymore. That's the problem. A few years ago, it came out, the details of Kanye West's deal, and how he basically doesn't own any of his masters. And when he dies, none of that stuff, none of that profit or any of it is going to go to his kids or anything. And it's because these record labels prey on young artists who don't really know what they're doing. They don't have a good business sense. All they see is dollar signs, and they're like, oh my God, my dream is coming true. And there's so many young artists out right now that are so huge in as far as like popularity. You've got artists like Tate McRae, who's like 19, I think. You've got artists, Billie Eilish, I think is like 21. You've got
Yeah.
Kid Leroy, who's literally 17. This kid is not even out of high school yet, and he's making millions and touring with Justin Bieber and like has all this stuff, and it looks and it sounds great. But the problem is I don't care who you are or how much advice or wisdom you've been given. When you're 17, you're a dumbass.
Exactly.
Like it does not matter who you are. You just are. And that's just a product of your age. It's not that you're dumb in general. You're just dumb because you're young. It's not like it's nothing against your intelligence. You've only had 17 years and really only like maybe 10 of actual like comprehensible
Right.
intelligence to be able to learn about life, and you don't know the importance of like setting money aside and saving and investing and all of these different things. And so like I see young artists like that, and I see young artists that aren't signed that are pursuing that, and I'm like, I don't know that you're ready for that. Like
Right.
you might get more than what you bargained for. And I mean, an artist that is a good example of like kind of did that and then fell off and then has now come back with a vengeance doing their own thing is T-Pain. So T-Pain was huge in the early 2000s with Buy You a Drink and Cyclone and all of these like club bangers. And he ended up like, I'm pretty sure he went bankrupt after a lot of that stuff, and he kind of fell off for a while, and then he's come back with a vengeance over the last few years because he started a Twitch channel and he started gaming. He has his own record label now, that's his label,
Right.
and now he's started doing his own things, but he still has those connections with those artists that he worked with back in the day. So he still has those connections with like your DJ Khaled's and your Fat Joe's and kind of the rappers of that era, T.I. and a lot of those people. And so I think to an extent, sometimes the talent or the ability can offset those early mistakes, and you can kind of come back and still be a really successful artist. But there's a lot of artists that the reason one hit wonder is a thing is because you have an artist that puts out a really good song and then doesn't know where to go from there,
Right.
because they don't have the mentors or the people advising them, the people supporting them that they need to actually be able to do something and build sustainability, which has been my primary goal. So I've been fairly active on TikTok for about 2 years now, and I didn't have one video that got 3 million views and gave me 40,000 followers. It's been a very slow process for me in getting to that point. And I'll have bursts where I'll have a video go semi-viral and then I'll get 8,000 new followers in a week or something like that. But it's never been this massive influx of followers. And the thing that I'm so fucking proud of, sorry, excuse my language,
You're
but that I'm so proud of is the videos that I have had that have gone viral have been videos of me performing and my music or a duet of music or something that I've done. It's never been one of these, oh, I duetted this comedy video and now this video went viral and I got a bunch of followers for something that's unrelated. Everybody that follows me outside of like bots and stuff follows me for my music, which is what I wanted to build my platform on. I see a lot of creators on TikTok who really want to do one thing, but then they do something else that blows up, and then now those people want more of that, and then they get pigeonholed into this niche that they never wanted to be in the first place, and they're not really able to do the stuff they want to do, and when they do that stuff, it doesn't go anywhere. Nobody's really there for it because they followed you for the comedy. They didn't follow you because you make good music. And so they don't really care about that. And for me, the following that I've gained has been from my music. And I've got, like I said, I've got over 50 on Instagram, and I've got 22,000 on 50 on TikTok, 22,000 on Instagram. Those are all organic followers that I've just gotten from working hard.
I think you're kind of missing something. You're not missing it. I know you're not, but I'm going to bring something to your attention about your content as well that is very important. The biggest thing that I found about mine is that it's me being vulnerable, me talking about who I am, because there is a part of that that's not just your music. Some of the videos that I've seen has been, going through a breakup, going through some of the mental health issues, some of those types of things as well. And I think that people want to relate to you in some way. Your music is great because it's a storytelling thing, but you also talk about your life and what you're going through and making yourself vulnerable. Can you talk a little bit about that and like how that's been something? Like, do you use it kind of like as a diary or like a place to say some of the things that you're feeling to get people to your songs? You obviously do that, but
absolutely. I mean, that's something that's always been incredibly important to me, is being authentic and being genuine. I'm not going to write a song about cars and money and stuff like that because I don't have cars or a lot of money. I'm not going to write a song about going out and like trying to hook up with girls because that's not my thing. That's not what I do. So for me, I write songs about things that either inspire me. I write songs about ways that I'm feeling, struggles that I go through. I went through a divorce last year, in the last like year and a half, and it's been one of the most difficult things ever. But then after that split, I ended up finding my girlfriend now, Amber, who is my everything. And it's almost like, wow, I didn't even know that a love like this existed. And so the album that I released at the end of last year is called Broken Complete, and the first like 3 or 4 tracks on that album are about my split and my divorce and my last relationship. And then it kind of progresses into like not really knowing who I am, and then I have several songs about my girlfriend on there. And so it's this kind of, for me, it was very therapeutic, that entire album,
right.
Where it started out as me like being hurt and being angry and being upset and not understanding like why this is happening to me. And like, I know I'm a good person, and why do good things happen to bad people, and not really knowing who I was because I lost who I was in my last relationship, and trying to be something for somebody that wasn't authentic, and rediscovering myself, and that whole journey of like who I've been for the last however many years is not who I actually am. It's not, these things are not things that I personally believe, or these are not things that I agree with, but I kind of had to go along with it because I was like, well, I have to, because I need to like try my best for the situation that I'm in. And a lot of my music is like a common theme in my music is like me battling my own inner demons, because it's very, very, it's there every day for me. I'm diagnosed bipolar, depression, anxiety, ADHD, PTSD. Like, I'm a clusterfuck of mental illness. And that could be debilitating. And for a lot of people it is. And a lot of people just kind of give up, and they're like, I can't handle this. I don't know what to do with all these emotions, all these feelings, whatever. And I've felt that way. I've felt like I want to give up. I've felt like I have nothing left.
Yeah.
I've given everything that I can possibly give of myself to people in my life, and there's nothing left for myself. And I don't, even the suicidal thoughts and attempts that I've had have never been like, I want to kill myself. It's been more of, I just don't want to exist anymore. I just don't want to be here. Like, I don't see a purpose. I don't feel like anybody would care if I was gone. And a lot of times when I'm in that place, those are feelings that a lot of people in our society, our culture, like, that's not a conversation people want to have.
No, you suppress it. I mean, it's not something. The thing is like we kind of talked about, it's a suppression thing. Like, men aren't made to, men in general, like people in general, in the 70s and whatever, it's like we didn't talk about that stuff. We took that person and sent them away, or we put them in a closet and said, hey, figure it out and come out when you're done. You know, those are the type of things that happen. And so, yeah, it's very important. And I appreciate that you talk about that, because we don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, that's just kind of how it comes out, is in my music. You know,
Yeah.
not everybody handles it that way. And there are people that handle mental illness and mental health in a very productive way that is private, that nobody sees. You know,
Right.
they work out a ton, or they make art, or they're active and they go out in nature or whatever. It's things that aren't public. My passion just so happens to be something that is public. And so when I'm going through these things, it's just incredibly transparent, and that's somewhat intentional, but it's also just kind of a product of where I am, you know. Like, I have, between my two primary social medias, I have 70,000 people that follow me. Like, that, you look at all these huge creators who have like several million followers or whatever, and you're like, that's that, like, I'm nobody, you know. But like, if you think about the fact that like the big house at the University of Michigan, their football stadium holds, I think, about 110,000 people. So the amount of people that follow me could fill that 3/4 of the way full.
Right.
If you think about it in the physical perspective of like, that's how, and if I were to walk on the field and there's a stadium that's 3/4 of the way filled, that's so many people that like are at any given point seeing what I'm doing. And
Right.
so I know the weight of that. And that's not to say that like I haven't made dumb videos here or there, I haven't said stupid things, or I haven't made mistakes, but I mean, we're all human and we all do that. I think the biggest thing is like, okay, if you made a mistake, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Are you going to try to change that and grow as a person, or are you just going to shake it off and end up doing that same thing again? And that's something that I've always tried to do, is when I do mess up, when I do make a mistake, whether that's publicly, whether that's in my private life, whatever it is, taking responsibility for what it is that I did, and trying to grow from that as a person. And I think that is something that, like you mentioned, and I don't even think it's just men, I think it's just people in general are desperately craving. I mean, the number of like stay-at-home moms that follow me is kind of ridiculous, but the reason for that is because there are crossovers, you know. Like I've had enough conversations with friends that are like stay-at-home moms, for instance, where it's like they don't get a moment to breathe from the moment they get up until the moment they go to bed. They get up and they're taking care of the kids, and they're taking care of the house, and they're doing all of these things, and then their partner gets home from work, and their partner's exhausted because they've been working all day, and so they don't really want to do anything, and there's just not a time to breathe. And maybe not in quite the same way, but like I've felt that way, like with my own head. Like I just cannot shut my own head off. And Chester Bennington said this in an interview about a year or two before he left us, and he said, between my ears is the most dangerous place I can be.
Right.
And he said when he's out and he's playing shows and he's out with the fans and he's out with friends and stuff like that, he's totally fine. But the moment that he gets in a room alone and it's just him and himself, that's the most dangerous place a person can be. And that has been one of the biggest difficulties for me, is just, and that comes from anxiety, that comes from trauma, that comes from a lot of different things, but being stuck in that place and feeling like you can't have a break. So when I write my music, a lot of times I will write it in a specific but general tense, if that makes sense. So like I'll write about something specific, but I'm writing about it in a way that somebody can sing those lyrics and it can be their thoughts. And one of the comments that I get the most, and something my dad actually told me years ago, was, your biggest gift is not making music. It's not having a good voice. It's not having skills and all these different things. Your biggest gift is the ability to say what other people don't know how to or can't say,
Right.
and verbalize that. And that's something that's stuck with me, and something that I take great pride in, because it's true. And I have people comment that all the time. Like I'll post something that is super serious, and I'll have people commenting like, are you inside my head? Or how did you know what I was thinking? Or this is exactly what I'm feeling right now, or whatever. And like, when I see those comments, like, it makes my heart sad, because I know that feeling and I don't want other people to feel that way. But at the same time, like, if my music allowed you to feel heard in a place where you feel silenced, then like, that is so powerful and like means so much.
That's the thing, man.
Sorry.
You're good. You're good. Hey, I want you to understand something though, because I think you gotta camp on that, because that's the thing, right? You're helping people just by what you're doing, and that's the way that I look at what I do. Like on TikTok, the videos that I try to post, and doing this podcast, and that is that what you bring to the table is like, you got to see that side of it, because that's what it is. You've given a person a place to go to realize that they're not alone in thinking the way that they think. So it's okay to be emotional about that, because you're helping people realize that, and it's got to help you in a way too, knowing that you're not alone, because there are other people who feel that same way that you do.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of those times when I'm writing that music, those are moments where I feel desperately alone.
Man.
And so when I put that stuff out and it's received that way, it's very freeing to be like, so something that I've learned in therapy, when I'm angry or upset or something like that, is, and it sounds cliche, but it works. And this is also kind of a metaphor for my music, is breathe in the anger and then breathe it out. So like breathe that in, let it sit there, let it do what it needs to do. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to feel these things, but breathe that in and then exhale that out and let that go. And for me, that's kind of what my music is my music is breathing that in, feeling that, putting that into words in a way that like maybe I can't talk to like even my friends about. And then when I put that out into the world, that's kind of like me letting that go. And it's me saying, this was my story, these were my feelings, but now it's yours. And now it's something for you to listen to, and for you to, I mean, I've had people literally message me like, there's a song that I put out earlier this year called You're Enough, which was, written about somebody that's really close to me, because they were going through some really, really rough times and feeling like they were worthless, feeling like they didn't have any value. And just this idea that like the fact that you exist and that you're here on this earth is enough, and you're worthy because of that. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be a certain way. You don't have to beat anyone. The fact that you are here and that you made it through another day, sometimes the fact that you just made it through today is the biggest accomplishment that you can have, and that's okay. And you are enough just because of who you are. And when I released that song, like the number of DMs and messages and comments and stuff that I got, where it's like, that's, nobody's ever told me that before, or like I've never heard that. And that's heartbreaking. But if I can somehow like be the one to tell you that, because like I may not know you personally, I may not know your story, I may not know what you've been through, but I know that you have value. Like that's inherent to the fact that you are. It doesn't matter that I don't know you, or that I don't know what you've been through, or the trauma that you faced, or whatever situation you're currently in, or the fact that like right now you want to end it. You're enough. And and a lot of my music tends to be somewhat depressing, because it is me working through those emotions.
Right.
But then songs like that are like, the other end of that spectrum where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm in a good headspace right now, and I know you're not, but I love you and you're going to get through it. And when people, like, I think a lot of people who struggle with mental health get mad when someone's like, you're going to be okay. And I think it depends on who is saying it, how it's
Right.
coming across, and what the tone is. But something that I've experienced from people that I know genuinely care about me when I've been in that place and when they've told me you're going to be okay, it's not that you're going to be great. It's not that things are all of a sudden going to turn around and you're going to get a $20,000 raise and you're going to like be living this amazing life. What it means when they say you're okay is, even though it's hard, you're going to get through it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be this smooth path moving forward now, but it does mean that like you made it through another day, and the fact that you woke up, you got out of bed, and you were able to do that and not end yourself, not go to the bar because you just want to drown out whatever you're
Right.
feeling. Like that's what's important. And so on a surface level where it's like, yes, I want to be a successful musician. I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to be able to do all of these things that I want to do. At the same time, sometimes I really do have to sit down and remind myself, or I have to have somebody close to me remind me, like, I know things aren't going the way that you wanted them to right now. I know you're not getting the views that you want. I know you're not getting the streams that you want, but that song had 350 streams, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 350 times that somebody listened to what you made,
Right.
and it meant something to them. And when you break it down to that rudimentary level of like, I think we get lost in it sometimes. We get lost in the numbers, and we forget that those 350 people are either 350, or those 350 streams are either 350 people, or that's 5 people who just listened to that song 30 times in a row because it's the only thing keeping them going right now.
Right.
And when you think about it from that perspective, it just gives it so much more value and makes it something that you can't put a price tag on. So,
Yep. Well, hey man, I appreciate you sharing this. I think that this is awesome. Where can people find you? I know you're doing a podcast. I know you've got your music everywhere pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
what else you got going on? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so on any streaming platform like Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff, my artist name is Architect the Dreamer, and I'm the only one. So you search that, you'll find me. On TikTok, I'm at ATD Music, and on Instagram, I'm at ATD Music _ because apparently there was another ATD Music on Instagram. And then like on Facebook, I'm Architect the Dreamer there as well. My podcast is entirely different from everything that we've talked about here. A lot of people see my presence on social media and they're like, man, you're just in it all the time. And my podcast is me and one of my best friends, Mikey, just being absolute degenerates and just talking about stupid stuff and being filthy and laughing until we choke and just being ridiculous. And it's another side of me. And it's a side that like I want people to be able to see. Because you've got like this side of me in this interview that's like very
Right.
serious, very, very like just serious in tone. And then my podcast, which is called The Yankee Hoser Show, which is on every streaming platform, and it's on a YouTube. And I'm in the US, he's in Canada, so I'm the Yankee, he's the hoser. And it's just, I mean, we do crazy would you rather questions. We have a whole segment called Weird Ass News, where every week we just pull like a ridiculous article from somewhere in the world. One of the episodes was like a guy got his hand chopped off at a 7-Eleven over a slushie in Hawaii. And like just ridiculous, over the top things. And then we just, the first segment of that show is we just kind of talk about our weeks and our lives and stuff like that. And the goal is for us to hang out as friends and to just kind of give people a reprieve from all the stuff that we've been talking about here. If you can watch or listen to my podcast and you can have 45 minutes where you can just shut your brain off and just laugh and have a good time, then we've done our job. And
Right.
and that's because that's what we're doing when we record it, is we're shutting off our brains and we're just being ridiculous and enjoying each other and enjoying the stuff we're talking about, and it's a good time. So yeah, those are the primary things that you can look at.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing what you're doing, and just know that you are changing lives. And I
appreciate that, man.
I think people see that, and sometimes I don't think they say it, right? Because it is when they're going through it and you're helping them and they tell you that's what they're saying. Yeah. It's like, you put me in that place where I need to be. So I appreciate you taking the time. I'll make sure that we get all that stuff in the show notes, and I can't wait to get this out so people can kind of see who you are.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. All right, everyone. Well, that is into the show, and I want you to think about something as we ended that conversation with Jay. The fact of the matter is that no matter what you're doing, whether it be talking about where you're feeling or putting out funny and silly things like that, you're making a difference in someone's life. And all you need to do is change one person's life. You may have saved one person's life by telling your story. So until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.